Gentlemen, there is a rumor going around that I like warriors. I wish to dust these rumors. I do not like warriors. I love warriors. Through my life, I have discovered so many types of warriors. Butchering Chinese history with particle effects. Dynasty warriors. Dancing around in a green tunic fighting some tart in a dragon costume. Hyrule warriors. Everyone has a sword, dyes their hair blue, and likes to argue about which era of games deserves better representation. Fire Emblem warriors. Life is hell. Berserk warriors.
Okay, I'm done. Point is, these games rock, and there's a ton of potential with how they branched out into different franchises. If they're gonna be a Gundam Warriors or a One Piece Warriors, we can easily get an Ace Attorney Warriors, defeat your enemies by aggressively filing papers! So, what other franchises would make a good Warriors game? Well, it has to have a large roster of heroes and villains, preferably from different timelines and or multiverse reach. The franchise's unique gameplay should jazz up the norm of the Warriors series, potentially having these mechanics become mainstays, and most important of all, a sizable number of mooks to destroy. Let's see what we can do. When you think of Dynasty Warriors, what comes to mind? You know, other than physics-breaking cutscenes starring very, very handsome people. A war between several kingdoms. So frankly, League of Legends is a natural choice. It's a war of several kingdoms already, although some of the fighters are fighting for more than just glory for their countries. Of the games that were very close to getting on the list, League was more developed on paper and has the biggest roster. I mean, there are over 130 champions, each with distinct personalities, backstories, and fighting styles. How has this not happened, and why aren't we funding this? Granted, League needs a little more visual development. We haven't seen much of the actual cities and lands other than a few trailers and some artwork. But this would be a good excuse to expand on the lore of League that no one except the Green Scorpion ever reads. And given the uniqueness of characters like Zack, Annie, Sona, Soraka, and Amumu, I think that a Warriors game would be an amazing opportunity to see their battling capabilities beyond 4 keys and a standard attack. I actually want to see Jax fighting so well that he was restricted to using a lamppost. Oh, and Lucian using his guns to fight hordes of undead mooks protecting Thresh? Sign me up for the Shadow Isles campaign! The funny thing about this next one, it was almost a reality. Pokemon. These little creatures have a lot of potential with their moves and attacks. I mean, if you need a small reference as to how it might go, just look at Pokken Tournament. It all sounds cool, but the unfortunate reality is there's logistics to get around. While the type advantage-disadvantage system would be cool, there are questions that need to be asked. Do we implement all 18 Pokemon types? Because if we do, we are going to have to balance type representation with Pokemon that people might actually want to play. And even then, it was difficult to balance it in Fire Emblem Warriors with just 6, so 18 would be a nightmare. Just having 2 for each type means we'd have 36 fighters, unless you're okay with doubling up, which would make things even more complicated. Do we give the enemy Pokemon the same courtesy? And then you have Pokemon that have potential for a great moveset in a game like this, but with little potential for actually being in it. For example, Gigalith could shake the ground and cause rocks to fall from the sky, but he's not going to be able to get around the map quickly, is he? Obviously, you have some natural choices. Pikachu, Gallade, Darkrai, Aegislash, even Mudsdale and Hydreigon could be feasible, but finding a balance between typing, variety, and playability is key. And as for the mooks, do we have maps contain several Pokemon types or just one? How do we decide which Pokemon are the mooks, the lieutenants, and the generals? Also, are the Pokemon controlling themselves, or are there trainers? If so, what role do they play in the game? Are they on the battlefield with the Pokemon? Can they be interacted with? I'm pretty sure these kinds of questions came up during the Koei Roundtable, which is why they moved on to something a little easier to grok, Pokemon Conquest. While that game was good, gosh darn it, you gotta wonder what could have been. Fire Emblem and Final Fantasy are pretty similar the more you think about it. I mean, they got similar magic, similar settings, and as of Awakening, similar obsessions with over-design. So why not give Final Fantasy a shot at a Warriors game? There's a large array of different creatures to fight, both beast and technological, hordes of goblins, of Malboros, and tonberries going doink. And the settings. Final Fantasy probably has the largest setting diversity out of any entry on this list, and each one is absolute eye candy. To list the amount of potential heroes and villains for each one is a daunting task. Now, while there is a lot of potential, a lot of the ground is already tread during Dissidia, so you'd have a hard time justifying this game's existence while Dissidia exists.
But still, just think of the possibilities, like acting out Kefka, destroying people en masse, burning them alive, and listening to the sweet sound of 1,000 voices screaming in unison.
I think I have issues. I think it's safe to say that the Tales games aren't as brand name recognizable as Final Fantasy. However, there's just as much in this series that could feasibly warrant a Warriors game made out of it. Like Final Fantasy and Fire Emblem, the Tales games have an enormous selection of places from which to derive their characters and settings, and I'd wager many fans would want to see how these characters would react in a crossover. There's a sizable list of monsters to destroy and diverse methods of attack with weapons and magic. The battle mechanics are like if Final Fantasy's magic system crossed with Kingdom Hearts beat-em-up mentality and had a very stylized and complex baby. So a bit of the work is already done for Koei. All that's remaining is the shenanigans that these characters could go through. I imagine much silliness come from Luke and Zelos. What? They got red hair. They're perfect for one another. Turn-based RPGs can get really over the top with the kinds of special moves and magic they provide. The gameplay format usually means you only have to fight a few foes at once, which is oddly limiting for the kinds of chaos you can unleash. Maybe that's the reason why these games lend themselves to adaptations like movies or full-on anime, which are allowed to break free and go full hog with the style. The Persona series in particular relishes in this. We've had fighting games and numerous anime adaptations where the turn-based combat gives way to utter anarchy, featuring characters armed with beings from all across mythology and fiction. Keep in mind, these games are already pretty flashy. Persona 4 gave us finishing moves like Galactic Punt, which translated pretty naturally to the kinds of super moves that fighting games are made of. Give Persona the Warriors treatment, and you'll be taking something already insane to its logical extreme. Punting one shadow to the moon isn't enough for you? Try punting a whole horde of them! Or what about Persona 5? That game has artistic flourish in spades. Imagine using an all-out attack and having cool splash screens or decals show up depending on the kinds of combos you make. Haru saying adieu after an intense battle would just be the kind of classy madness this series needs. The sheer range of personas that the human cast can summon has to speak volumes too. In the core games, each one usually attacks with spells that any of them could theoretically use. Instead, why not have Thor actually swing around his hammer in dazzling strikes? Or have Captain Kidd bombard an entire crowd of enemies with the ship's cannonballs? Or you could summon Mara and no, I am not giving that thought the time of day. Nope. As you might have noticed, a series with a fantasy bend, a rich history filled with bloody conflict, and a strong emphasis on magic usually are the ones that are likely to become Warriors games. So let's take a look-see through some popular ones. How about Warcraft? I mean, it's got a sizable timeline spanning thousands of years. Well, decades if we're just talking Horde versus Alliance. It has dozens of different environments like cities, tundras, volcanic wastelands, and even space. It has many diverse characters and races with diverse weapons and abilities. You got orcs, goblins, elves, space goats, furries, all whom fight with different kinds of magic and even technology. And given that Warcraft already has a theme of war and conflict, it's in the name after all. Now, the only issue about having a Warcraft Warriors is that ground has been tread via Heroes of the Storm. But what puts it above Final Fantasy and Dissidia is that Heroes of the Storm was never intended to have a serious story. Imagine if they did. Any list worth its salt is going to have Mario on it somewhere, and this list certainly meets its daily dose of sodium. The Mario universe is ripe for warriorization. There are enough theories claiming that Mario's a genocidal madman, so why not give him the chance to slaughter Goombas and Koopas en masse? And it's easy because Mario's already had his share of crossovers, and you have expansive landscapes, well-developed characters, and plenty of potential antagonists from several different multiverses. There are dozens, hundreds of mooks to choose from. I'd also love to see how they would implement Mario's item system. Maybe grabbing an item changes the character's moveset. And since there are so many spin-offs, the roster is huge. You could bring in people from the Paper Mario series like Black, Vivian, Lady Bo, and Bobbery. Or even the Mario and Luigi series like Fawful, Phantasma, Starlo, Popple. And you would have amazing diversity. The major problem with this ever happening is Nintendo itself. Mario is the franchise they have the tightest death grip on, and getting them to allow Koei to have a crack at it would take an act of Satoru Iwata-sama's will himself. It did happen with Rabbids, so maybe Thunderhand will strike twice? Warriors is basically the following concept. Anime with China, anime with Hyrule, anime with Fire Emblem. Kid Icarus Uprising is super anime already, so it's right at home. Tons of weapons, creative and unique characters, gorgeous backdrops, so much to go all the way with. And there's a large compendium of mooks to fight as well. The Eggplant Wizard and the Tempura Wizard definitely have some potential for the player to be screwed with and over. Only issue is the roster is a bit small due to only having 2 games. That's easily remedied, sure, but it's still an issue, and part of the joy of Warriors games is having characters from different universes and timelines coming together. Besides, if Hyrule Warriors can pull characters that don't even exist into the game, so can Uprising Warriors. We can have playable characters based on Greek myths like Bellerophon on a Pegasus, Selene, the goddess of the moon, or even bring in Hades' wife Persephone. Frankly, with the amazing dialogue Uprising is known for, I'd love to see Hades as a possibly henpicked husband. You know, by this point, we're basically talking about having the Kid Icarus sequel be a Warriors game. And I'm okay with that. This series has already had a game that brought characters together from different timelines and continuities to fight against a grand evil. But not very many people liked it, so... Type 2. Castlevania has perhaps the most perfect excuses to be transformed into a Warriors game. First of all, there is a huge amount of mooks. 2, with 30 years worth of games, they have an incredibly dense roster of both heroes and villains. Simon, Trevor, Siffa, Alucard, Richter, Carmela, Shinoa, Soma Cruz. There's so much we can do. Thirdly, there is literally centuries worth of time periods to explore. Fourthly, sure, most of these games take place in a castle, but there are a lot of different kinds of castles, and each one had its own set of caverns, courtyards, towns, and even battlefields. So there's potential there. Fifthly, it kind of needs it, considering that the latest we got from it was an erotic pachinko game. And finally, someone needs to give Koei the chance to design Simon Belmont in a way that doesn't make him look like a BDSM version of Light Yagami. Seriously, the Captain N version looked better. Finally, you get the franchise that everyone loves, except for the people who own it. Oh my god! They're adding Mega Man! Mega Man is perfect for a Warriors spin. I mean, we've already had Warriors games where robots kill each other, so it's absolutely possible. Mooks? Check. Every Robot Master and Maverick had several different minions unique to their stages, not to mention 1 or 2 mini-bosses that you have to fight. Large roster? Check. Not only do you have a wide variety of heroes like Zero, Axel, Colonel, Iris, Roll, Spider, Cinnamon, and Glide, you have a wide variety of Mega Men. Multiple landscapes / multiverses? Massive check! You have several different timelines, different situations where Mega Man pops up, and even different play styles that can be implemented. Technically speaking, you can explore any terrain because of the various levels in the series. Need a forest? How about Axel the Red or Bamboo Pandemonium stages? Need an industrial setting? Flame Mammoth or Metal Man stage has you covered. Fire area? Magma Dragoon, son! And lastly, the antagonists of these games have been ranked as some of the most notable of all time. You've got Wily, Sigma, Vile. There's so much potential here. And that's the thing, Mega Man is not only thematically perfect, but it deserves and moreover needs it the most. After Capcom's continued contempt for this series, coupled with the massive failure of Mighty No. 9, we need to restore people's faith in the Blue Bomber. I'm the Fiery Joker, thanks for watching.